Morris here, sitting next to Bruce Lurch, Boston Herald, Scott Barbosa, ESPN Boston. Needham High School, Memorial Field, Boston Lax in the house, fellas. We got a little bit of a tournament preview right now. I'm gonna go through the brackets, go through the players, and let's really break this thing down. Right? I mean, I don't think anybody's ever done this before for Massachusetts high school lacrosse. I think it's on us and this little gazebo here, looking all handsome, and let's break this thing down accordingly. What are you guys feeling so far, just as a season overall? You know, what have you seen in terms of whether it's Division III, Division I, Division II, Western Mass, Central Mass? How have you guys felt this season's gone?
Well, I mean, for me, Sean, it's been a lot of. I like seeing new teams rising up, and I'll start with Division III. I really think that some of the North Shore schools in particular are really starting to get on the map. Schools like North Reading, Swampscott, Newburyport, you know, all these guys, these smaller schools up on the north, they're starting to get that taste of success. North Reading has kind of been the leader in that department, 39-4 over the last 2 years. But all these other teams coming up behind them, it's great to see the growth there. And then in D1, some fresh faces really stepping up, you know, for so long in D1. There's been kind of a big four lacrosse teams with Duxbury and Billerica, Lincoln Sudbury, and St. John's Prep. But this year, you know, welcome back to the rest of the dual county league. You know, Acton, Boxborough, Westford Academy really coming up big. Needham, perennial long-time team back, Masconomet, you know, teams like that. So, you know, for me, it's been the emergence of some new teams challenging the traditional power teams of more recent vintage.
Yeah, I think you talk about the dual county league in particular and just the dominance there with, you know, even a team like Westford Academy has the potential, I think, to make some noise in the tournament. And then obviously with Weston returning Division III champion and Concord Carlisle being Concord Carlisle again, looking at some of those, you know, traditional powerhouse conferences really taking it to a different level this year, I think.
So let's get into this. Let's start talking about the Division III bracket. All right, let's start off with those guys. Where do you see the key matchups kind of coming underway right off the bat in this preliminary round before we start to really get into the nuts and bolts? Are there potential matchups where it could be an upset? Who do you guys think are those games?
Well, I mean, one team that we all won't call really an upset, but it's Cohasset. I mean, right. Cohasset struggled this year with some injuries, struggled in the early part of the season, so their record isn't as good as it normally is. They ended up as a 20 seed. But obviously, we all know they're back to full health. They're not a 20 seed by any stretch of the imagination in Division III. So, you know, they're not so much a sleeper team, but just you got to watch for them because they're not where you expected them to be. For me, the other team to watch really has been Watertown. They've already opened up the tournament with a win over Fairhaven. Fairhaven was the 10 seed. Watertown was the 23 seed. Sean, you got to see Watertown during the regular season. They were Boston Lax game of the week for us against Melrose. You know, they may not be done. You know,
I think they got great coaching over there.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's one element too. I mean, they're fast, they're physical, they like to get up and down. But once again, we're at the tail end of the season, right? So how long can they preserve that energy for? And that's going to be up to the senior class. You know, I think those are the key figures in this stage of the game when, okay, you got a game on Monday, then you got a game on Thursday, or a game on Tuesday, game on Friday or Saturday, and they'll start to really tack on this late in the season. And a team like Wakefield, they could make that run, but they're in a gauntlet. You know, there's some other squads that you've seen as well, Scott?
I'm looking at that other side of the bracket, and I think we all have Dover Sherborne as our eventual favorite, and, you know, it's been that case for a couple of years running now, and we'll see if they can finally pull it off here. But I want to see who's going to be the team that is stepping up and challenging them in that potential semifinal game. I think that other side of the bracket is very interesting with Newburyport, team we were just talking about off camera. Then you got, you know, maybe Arlington Catholic sneaks in there. I don't think Hanover, you know, is a team that we had a lot of buzz hearing from from the preseason into today. I don't think that's such an easy matchup. That's not a slam dunk by any sense of the imagination. So I want to see who that team is that comes out. Again, as you said, maybe it's one of those North Shore teams like Newburyport that makes a name this year and is able to go up and challenge Dover Sherborne and perhaps maybe get into a title game.
I'll give you guys a couple of names too from some of those teams. Arlington Catholic, first and foremost, you know, they got a 300-point scorer in Mike Santola, another great attackman in Zach Blanch, and a guy that I want everybody to look out for this tournament. And again, and into next year, he's a younger guy. Wears number 77, so we give him some love on the Ray Bork hockey side. Just an absolute terror out there as a midfielder, scooping up ground balls, playing both ends of the field. Guy to watch. You know, in their next tournament game as well as the next couple of years. We kind of glossed over Hanover a little bit. A lot of talent down there, and don't forget Hanover's got a big signature win this year.
Yeah.
I mean, Hingham was kind of a team that we all had in the top 5 overall in the state.
Probably the biggest head scratcher of the year when you saw that result come down,
Certainly.
especially the complexion of that game.
Yeah, and you've got guys like Tim Riley over there, Dustin Vitagliano, Pat Hannigan, one of the more talked about, kind of unsung, but I like to call them the cult favorites in the lacrosse community. Everybody on the forums and everybody on the website love Pat Hannigan. He's a heck of a player. So I think there's an interesting clash. We'll see. You got one South Shore team in Hanover with Newburyport and Arlington Catholic there from the north. We'll see if the South can rise again to go and challenge Dover Sherborne.
So looking at this bracket as a whole, let's get a prediction out there. Who do you think is going to hoist the trophy at the end of the season?
Well, for me, I got Dover Sherborne coming out, like Scott said. We all do. I like Norwell's chances getting there opposite. I think Norwell is an excellent team. Cabot Noyce, what a great gift for them to come back home from such
just announced All-American as well.
Just recently announced All-American player, well deserved. A couple other guys in that squad that were certainly worthy of consideration. You got to see Joe Raschuti play. He's a face-off guy, but he does everything. He's the second leading scorer on the team. Gets up and down the field, hits people. He's a big physical kid. Sean Tierney, another kid, driving force on the attack. Scores some goals. Very impressed with Norwell. So I like them matching up against Dover in the final, but I like Dover to get over the hump.
Yeah,
Coach Mack, we got to get you.
No pressure.
I think that's the matchup you got to look for. I don't think there's much of a chance. As much as I mentioned those teams that might be able to come up and play, DS in that semifinal game. I think DS, from what I've seen all year long, of course, with Billy Polk in that midfield, is just such a dynamic player. I think we even saw that last year at Harvard Stadium, the type of caliber player he was, and All-American status this year again. But I think it's DS over Norwell. I don't think it goes any other way.
And that's no disrespect to North Reading. I mean, we mentioned North Reading off the top. I just want to come back to them real quick. Great season that they've had, and they're going to give Norwell all they can handle, coming in that semifinal. Not to mention, we talked about Watertown. We didn't even mention Archbishop Williams. Should the seedings hold, we got a great opportunity for kind of a highlight matchup, a fun matchup with a pair of 300-point scorers. Cody Carbone from North Reading and Cam Joyce of Archbishop Williams. I mean, that could be an exciting matchup there. So, we'll see how it shakes out, which of those teams gets to Norwell, but I think we're all in agreement on we're all expecting a Norwell DS final.
Well, you got to show some love to the Joyce family.
Got to show some love to
They've
Archie.
been all over the site this
all
far.
over Boston Lax.
Just covered them at the Final Four as well.
That's
so.
right. Looking great in the parking lot. I love that. I love that. Cam looks good in his Boston Lax t-shirt.
Oh, good. So let's continue on down here. I mean, Western Mass, they're going to be announcing their brackets on Thursday. It is. So we'll get that up on the site. But let's get into Division II. Let's get into the central part of it. Yep. Everybody knows about Tinsboro and Algonquin. Is there somebody that can potentially challenge those guys to once again make a state title run?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, not that it played out so much in their matchups against each other this year, but St. John's Shrewsbury to me is always a very tough team. Get to see the second matchup between Algonquin, and it was very much a possession game, and St. John's Shrewsbury just had a tough time getting it up, and I think if they had gotten up early and been able to get a couple goals, they would have been more in that game. Obviously, with Jeff Desko up there, a very dynamic scorer. But maybe we see a Grafton, maybe we see a Tantascwa. Maybe that's a very interesting side of that bracket over there. Over on Tingsboro's side, I don't think Tingsboro is going to have an easy time by any chance getting into that final game. But yeah, I think there are teams that have a chance, obviously.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, I personally kind of favor Algonquin. Just having seen them last year and the year before various times, I just like what they're doing over there. Connor Healy is just is an excellent scoring player. Obviously, St. John's always has talent. Coming out of the other side, you mentioned Tingsboro, undefeated. I mean, still, how long can that go?
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate to see those guys in the game of the week, and they're very talented on the attack end. They have strong goaltending. There's a guy that I've been touting, Tim Dick, as a freshman, who's their LSM, who reminds me of young, James Burke, Riley Nate. Gets up and down the field, pushes the tempo, sticks always in passing lanes. He's just creating chaos. And at that LSM position, and we saw it this past weekend in the Final Four as to how valuable that is for those teams. And I think those are the types of guys, in this tournament that can really be a game changer. So I think Tinsboro for me would be the team to beat that bracket. How about yourself?
Like I said, I'm kind of siding with Algonquin. I just, I don't know why. I always feel odd picking the team to go back to back. Feel like, because it's so close. I think it's so close with Algonquin and St. John's and Tingsboro and Grafton. And I think, some upset teams. Scott mentioned Tantascwa, Shrewsbury also. Whichever team wins that game that they play today is going to give Grafton a hard time, and then. You get to the semis and you get whoever's left standing. But I do like Algonquin myself.
Icebreaker here?
Algonquin as well. I mean,
Okay.
I really was impressed when I get to see them against St. John's. They're not only their talent, but speed offensively, and then also their discipline. Very good with the ball. I mean, very good technically. I mean, just passing, catching, able to work the ball around. They don't force anything. They're very patient. And you see a lot of big scores with them. But I don't think that really, tells you how disciplined they are with the ball. And I think so much of their success comes from that. I think if they didn't win Central, I think it would be a disappointment for them, really.
So let's break this down now. Let's come back east. And this might be the hardest bracket to call out of them all, right? I mean, there is a wealth of talent on hand. There's players all over the board becoming All-Americans. You have big schools, small schools. It's kind of just that melting pot, right, of teams and just quality talent. And, you get into this and you start to break it down and you say, okay, one, this guy could lose in the quarters or this guy could lose in the semis. And then really looking at, that Final Four matchup of the semis into the finals, who's it going to be? I mean, this is a crapshoot. For me, I look at the Hingham Concord Carlisle 1 versus 2. How does Concord Carlisle go undefeated and not take that number 1 seed, right? Let's be serious. And they are highly, highly talented. They're obviously well coached. Hingham had maybe it's a stronger schedule when it's all said and done, but to be undefeated, is it a slap in the face, and is that motivation to take this bracket over themselves?
Not to mention Concord has a win over Hingham.
Exactly.
On the
Coaches' Cup.
I think the one regret that Coach D'Alcandro will have from this season in terms along those lines is just simply not scheduling more games. I mean, they played 16 games during the regular season, and it just wasn't enough when it came down to the actual strength of schedule formula. Yeah. Obviously, they were number 1 in the coaches' poll, but the strength of schedule, Hingham playing more games actually helped them, because they had that many more games against the tournament quality teams. So that's where Concord kind of lost out on the number 1 seed. I think they landed okay though, and I think they're a pretty strong favorite on their side of the bracket. There's some tough teams. They littered in Division II. Yes. I called it the annual slugfest in the Herald this week in my tournament preview. And you just never know. I mean, there's 8 to 10 teams that could realistically come out of this thing, and then another 5 or 6 behind them that are capable of the upsets. So,
speaking of upsets, we already got one. Burlington over Beverly.
Yes.
Not teams that you're not thinking about maybe in that elite echelon there, but a very interesting matchup coming up with Burlington and Winchester. Obviously a great Middlesex League rivalry. That'll be an interesting game, and then whoever comes out of that gets to play Hingham in that next round, which woe to them. But I mean, I think that just underscores and illustrates how wide open Division II is year in, year out. Great Beverly team. I mean, great game from everything I heard coming out of there yesterday. You never know what's going to happen in this tournament. If there is a tournament where you will see an upset, it's usually Division II.
And actually, let me jump in one more time here. We're talking about Hingham, and I want to bring up a point. You mentioned Winchester. Let's not forget this last year. Winchester faced Hingham in the Coaches Challenge Cup. Got rifled, absolutely obliterated. Yeah. Came back, played them in the tournament, played them to a 1-goal game.
Yeah.
Okay. Coach Ferrani had those boys ready to go. And again, they were at the Coaches Cup this year. Didn't have great success while they were there, but learned, followed the way. Don't be surprised, Hingham knows they're going to have their hands full with round 2 with Winchester. Yep.
And then you bring it back down to the bottom half of that bracket. You might have that Medfield versus Catholic Memorial contest, which, as we know from me, I've always been a big fan of CM throughout the season. I think they have talent on all levels. I think they have good leadership in place. And now you got a Medfield team bringing back Conorati and what they've been able to do. I mean, you covered them yesterday too in their first round matchup win. These are squads that can play. Flat out, they can play, well coached, well disciplined. So let's get to it. What's the prediction?
Well, you want to talk about Catholic Memorial? Tom Stanton.
Yeah.
I think great story there. All-American, great hockey player. For Coach Hansen, of course. Always a big fan of the lacrosse scene. But
Coach Hansen, let me show you. Let me interrupt for 1 second. Was demonstrating rollback moves for me in the middle of the hallway at Catholic Memorial a couple weeks ago when I went up to do a feature on the
has a lacrosse stick in his office. He's always at the ready. Again, I think this is so wide open. One thing I want to look at is that Wellesley side of the bracket. Wellesley getting the number 4 seed. I don't think that's a tough draw. I think with Scituate. I think that's a team that's kind of been laying in the weeds here.
Without a doubt.
That is very talented, and I kind of like the matchup there. So, we talk about a team, Wellesley, we all know them, obviously, Connor Darcy, all-world goaltender, Ryan Cassidy, another All-American there. I don't think that's an easy draw for Wellesley at all. And I'm looking at that side of the bracket. I really want to see that matchup, that 4-5 play in there. I think that's going to be a very interesting and indicative game in the bracket, is the way that everything else will go. Obviously, I'm going to go with Hingham, playing through that side of the bracket. Going around to the other side, Concord Carlisle, I think we can put them there. Reading, I think there's a question there what they have. Foxborough's lost so much, obviously with Greg Stamatov, standing on his head throughout the year. I like Concord Carlisle to get through there. And then looking at the other side, again, as you mentioned, Sean, that really interesting side of the bracket with Catholic Memorial, and then Medfield coming through there. Medfield, the beginning of the season, we saw it. That first matchup against Dover Sherborne, obviously that big rivalry game, just didn't have it, and they were in flux at that point. But then turned completely outside of its head with that second game, senior night, down at Medfield. Connor Roddy back in the lineup. But somebody I was really impressed with, which you talked about yesterday too, is Cal Given. I think those guys together, they are so dynamic, and they really make that team hum. And obviously with Connor, even when he doesn't show up on the stat sheet, he makes that team so much better, and they're just so much more dynamic on offense. So I really like Medfield, I think, to pull through. And I think that Medfield-CC matchup on that semifinal, on that side of the bracket, I really think I'll go on record here and say whoever wins that game ends up winning the bracket.
Wow. Bruce?
Yeah,
that's
pretty,
that's pretty good.
It's pretty strong. I'm going to disagree, though. As strong as it was.
There we go. Yeah. I'm friends after all in the casino.
No, and I'll be honest with you, I'm having a hard time. You know what? And you can lay this one on me. Haven't picked Medfield to win the last couple of years, and what have they done? Won. But it's just, I think that matchup with Catholic Memorial is just so tough to call. CM, not just Tom Stanton, but Austin Bannister, those guys on defense playing terrific. Miles McCarthy in the goal. The attack guys who really get talked about but can score. Plus, there's some connections there. We have a Bletzer on CM that has Medfield connections and whatnot. So they'll be up for this game. And if there's ever been a year that Catholic Memorial has been motivated, it's been this year. The kids have been talking about banner all year, and they're not done with just the Catholic Conference banner. They're trying to get more. On the other side, he talks about Wellesley. Don't look ahead to the 4-5 matchup. They got North Andover next. And North Andover came on very strong at the end of the season. Your boy Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan Conley's doing a great job. Former UMass roommate of mine.
They had them playing well. So it's just the tougher brackets, and of course, Concord is the perpetually underappreciated. Like, we always know they're going to get there. But are they going to score enough goals to get over the hump? And for me, that's why I'm taking Hingham. I think Hingham is the one team that I feel the most confident that can survive their bracket, but get through. And when it comes time for that championship game, with guys like Kevin Blair and Dave Freitas and Noah Ellis on that attack line, they're the guys who can actually score enough goals. And it just, and I've been proven wrong on this before, but that's my rationale behind taking Hingham. So Hingham's my choice.
Yeah, and I think for me, my Final Four is going to break down. Hingham, Concord. I think they don't have an easy bracket by any means, but I think we know what we have in them. Though. I think they've proven it over time. And then you kind of get into that CM in that Medfield bracket. I'm going to go with CM, and then you're going to break down across the pond. You got to go. I think I'm going to take Scituate in that matchup. With Seesaw in there with Brown on the attack. they are putting up points.
Yeah.
You know, and that's something you're going to need to do against a strong Wellesley team. And I'm not sure that Wellesley can keep up that high level of play on the offensive end. So I do like Scituate in that matchup. When it's all said and done, though, I got to go Concord Carlisle. You know, I think they've just been getting it done, and I think they just have a wealth of talent. It was funny, we did our preseason interview, and they said, yeah, I don't know what we really have coming back to the squad this year. Well, we got an undefeated team, so I think things panned out pretty good. Right?
What about a freshman like Will Blumenberg coming in as
exactly.
well?
Who, for me, you know, I think he should have been in those talks for All-American. You know, I think he is somebody as talented as, you know, a Max Quinzani. You know, I think he just has that athletic ability in every sport that he plays, right? I mean, this kid is a dynamic player, a tough, athletic, confident player. Whether or not he can sustain that in the playoffs, he'll be a big piece of the puzzle. But you have Bumpus down there as well. So I mean, those guys, you know, they'll corral him in. You know, and for me, I think that's where Concord Carlisle really steps up. So, and guys, before we break down this Division I bracket, you know, we have a team in Chelmsford, but there lies a story that Boston Lax has covered. Ryan Killian has more on Tom Gallagher's disability that occurred last winter, and this is a piece that we felt throughout the season really needed to be highlighted. And without further ado, here's Ryan Killian.
Ryan Killian with BostonLax.net here at Chelmsford High School with Coach Tom Gallagher and the Chelmsford Lions as they prepare for their first round matchup against Woburn High School.
I think across the board, I think together as a team, I think offensively they've now found each other. They know where each other's going to be at certain times, and defensively, they've learned how to support each other. You know, take risks and back up those risks with with the right slides at the right time, and communication has been huge. And you know, since then, I mean, we've had a couple of big wins thrown in the middle of that, and we're not perfect, but every day's a work day for us. So hopefully it'll all come together in the next couple of days.
Gallagher began the Chelmsford lacrosse program over a decade ago, and it has flourished since. He suffered a freak accident in December, a pre-existing herniated disc rupture, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. Less than 4 months later, Gallagher was back on the sideline with assistance from family, community, and assistant coaches.
Yeah, it's for me, in my situation, lacrosse has been, and the kids and the coaches and everything has been it's been the best form of rehab for me personally. I mean, being out here, being able to talk to the kids, coach the kids, see them grow as individuals. I mean, it's been an experience. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm kind of blessed that I have that opportunity. There's a lot of people in my situation that don't have that opportunity to be able to come back out on the field or have something like this in their life to do that. And my family, my wife, my kids, I mean, they've been unbelievable, and this whole thing, I can't say enough about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's great coming back here and seeing Coach, after his accident. It's tough to see him in such a position because I had him when he was able to walk and stuff, and I just think it's great that he's been able to come back and coach, and I know it's tough for him to see everything he's doing and how he gets out here every day, and I know we're working hard to raise money for him, and it's for a great cause, and but I think he's doing a great job with the team, and they look great this year. I think it's great. I get to come back. He always asks me to come back and help out with some guys, and just because this is where I started, and so I'm back and help all these guys out because I know some of their dreams are the same as what my dream was, and I was able to accomplish my dream. So,
well, I really feel like we have gotten a lot better since the beginning of the season. Our offense, we move the ball a lot better. Our catching and passing is like a lot more spot on than it used to be. Really, I feel like we're more like unified than we were in the beginning. I mean, we all hang out all the time. I mean, we're usually not like individuals on the team. We hang out together. We have practice, and then we hang out like off the field too.
Yeah, no, he's been amazing. Come off something like that. Our team's had our ups and downs, but he's always been there. He's the same coach he was always. he's a coach on and off the field, definitely. He's taught me a lot about life, not just lacrosse and practice, but how to be a good person, how to have good morals and stuff. He's a real good guy.
I don't know, it's been fun. Like 4 years, I've been through 4 teams, and they've all been different. Like this year, we're more of a team. We all rely on each other, pick up each other. And Coach has been awesome for 4 years. He's just like, he hasn't changed, even though, like Ty said, what's happened. So it's been good.
Fellow Merrimack Valley Conference coach Dan O'Brien from Dracut High School has been coaching opposite Gallagher since he took over the middies in 2005.
I met him when I took the job in Dracut 5 years ago, and through the course of preseason meetings and playing each other, we've gotten to know each other pretty well. I do. I know exactly where I was. I was actually driving home in early December, maybe a week or so after it happened, and my wife actually called me because she teaches some Chelmsford students, and she had heard from them, called me to see if I had heard anything or if I had known anything. And at the time I didn't. My next call was to my assistant coach, who is a teacher in Chelmsford, and he filled me in on the whole story. And then I kind of started making some calls out to the rest of the Merrimack Valley coaches, and trying to make sure check on Tom, and got to go see him a couple days afterwards. It was reassuring. His spirit was great, considering everything that he was dealing with and going through, and I'm glad actually Coach Puglisi from Andover and myself got to go in and see him before he headed down to the rehab center, and we talked to him, and I knew right then that he was going to do everything it took to get back on the field, and it was really reassuring to see
Coach
that.
Stone, he was the head coach at North Middlesex, and he was with Chelmsford Lacrosse for good 6-7 years before he left, and kind of turned the program around. They had a couple tournament runs out there, and we had a conversation when I was in the hospital. I asked him, if he'd be willing to come back in a year or so, because I know his kids are getting older, and see if he wanted to be around. He went home that night, had a conversation with his wife, and the next day he called me up and he says, I'm back this year. I'm like, what? And it's been a blessing in disguise, because so he knows what the program's about. He knows who I am. We graduated high school together. We've been friends for a long period of time. So we have that going. And then we have Coach Doherty. He's been with me for 10 years. He runs our freshman program. He's been great. Coach Wellman. He played on our very first lacrosse team that we ever had here. He came back and helps me with the defense. It's nice to have another set of eyes on the defense, And Coach Harrington, who can say enough about Coach Harrington? He's been with me for about, I want to say, we've been here 14 years. He's probably been here for 10 out of those 14 years. And, for years I thought I was taking care of him, but he's actually taking care of me. So that's a great thing about it,